TVA internal comms. Subject line, Mobile Suit Gundam. Agents, Nakware and Jonathan. Agent Jonathan. As the resident otaku at the TVA, this mission falls to you. What is Mobile Suit Gundam, and should it continue to exist in all its various permutations on the sacred timeline? It's up to you to make the case. That's right, this is a new type of mission, but critical nonetheless. Good luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the EVA. That is Jonathan McNamara, the best beard this side of Texas. I am Nakware Howard, your favorite person's favorite person, aka I got hot takes for days, aka Mr. Never At Me. This is your entertainment arena where we are judge, jury, and keepers of the timeline. We decide what entertainment properties make it on the sacred timeline and what need to be pruned. Today, we are switching things up a little bit. Today, we will be breaking down some content that you should be interested in and telling you why. So, Agent Jonathan is going to get into why you should be interested in Gundam, an arena he knows way too much about. And is
You're letting me off the chain. You made a mistake. You made a horrible mistake.
Why you should be watching this. Furthermore, why Gundam should be a staple in your entertainment chamber. All right, J-Mac, let's hear it.
You're just gonna let me go?
I am gonna let you go. I would like
you don't have a question
for you to
you
just give us
question?
An overall overview of why people should like Gundam from a high level. I am completely new to this world. What is it? Why does it matter? What's it similar to? What separates it? And then really, what is the heart of the content? So like, just give me a high level, 5 to 10 minutes on like the soul of Gundam.
I think the first thing that I want to say is that as we go through life, I'm gonna get a little abstract here and then bring it in. Okay, just let me work from the outside in here. As we go through life, we exist in silos, whether we know that they're silos or not, right? So, for example, I'm an American. I live in Texas. When I was thinking about how to have this conversation, it was almost impossible not to think about it and think about expressing it in relation to something that people who share the silo that I'm in would appreciate. But what I want to do is just make you think for a second about what it would be like if you just acknowledge that you're in one. You're in a silo. There's things here that you know about, that you're comfortable with, and that's all based on survival, right? Like you got to keep it in a controllable kind of sphere. That's why we do this. That's how the human brain works. But just forget about that for a second, because I'm about to say some outlandish stuff, but it only sounds outlandish because of the silo that you're in. And if you were in a silo like growing up in Japan in the 1970s, this wouldn't sound outlandish at all.
It'd be totally normal, is what you're saying.
It'd be totally normal, yes. So let's just start there. The other thing I want to say as a preamble to this is the media property that it is most tempting as an American, as someone in the West, to compare Gundam to is Star Wars. And I'm not going to explain or provide the examples. I'm just going to let that ride, and then you can take from it what you will. But when people try to talk about Gundam, and when they try to explain the scope of it, they talk about it in relation to Star Wars. And I think that gets you like 60% of the way there in terms of understanding the scope. So that's my preamble. Try to think about this outside of your comfort zone and understand that I'm going to say some outlandish shit. So when I think about why you need to be into Gundam, or why Gundam should be on your radar, it's because it is a show a property, a franchise that has inextricably impacted film, anime, video games, toys forever. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history.
Yeah, I need you to say more. That's a really big statement.
Okay. It is.
You just compared Gundam to arguably the largest franchise ever made. Arguably.
Star Wars?
The largest franchise
yeah,
ever
but
made.
Here's the thing. Star Wars is only now doing stuff that Gundam has been doing for decades.
Again, so you made a pretty big claim.
I told you I'm going to say some outlandish.
You followed that out with saying Gundam has impacted TV, film, entertainment, toys, I think
video games, music.
So
yeah, it's almost so big that it's impossible to talk about in a way that isn't just random stabs at cool aspects of this. Here's what I can tell you from a historical perspective. It's 1979, which means we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of this franchise. 3 years away. It's 1979. At that point, kind of glossing over here, but just go with me on this journey. Most of the giant robot anime, which is an established genre, is what we would now call super robots.
Okay,
so these are...
Before you even go any further, this is such a serious question. You are saying that the giant robot anime genre does predate Gundam. Like that's not me hating. I'm genuinely curious. It predates Gundam, so this has been around at least the 25 years prior.
Yeah, I don't know the full... I'm not going to try and give you the full history of anime in general, but what I can tell you is that there were a lot of giant robot shows, especially in the context of the late 70s when Gundam did come out. There were a lot of giant robot shows, and giant robots in general were an established genre within anime and manga, but those robots largely were what we would call super robots. So they are not grounded in reality. They do not require anything approaching a fundamental understanding of like physics. They just do cool shit because they're robots, right? And the people who pilot them are, for the most part, with some exceptions, heroes in the classic mythological kind of surface level sense. These are dudes who are fighting against forces that are inherently evil. In some cases, they're literal demons, or like alien invaders or monsters. There's a lot of kind of crossover here between giant robots and kaiju.
Yeah.
When you think giant robot anime in 1978, that's what you're talking about, is these superpowered robots that can shoot their fists off. They shoot laser beams, but they're not shooting them out of a gun. They just like take a heroic pose and a bunch of lasers shoot out of their chest or whatever. And what Gundam did is it came in and it said, wait a minute, what if we traumatized everyone by doing a giant robot anime that was a war story and showed the horrors of war? And what if it wasn't super clear who the bad guys are? What if you actually loved one of the bad guys more than any of the protagonists? What if we did that? Hey, what if we kill off half the human population before the story even starts? What if we try to explain why this technology exists and why it has been implemented and grounded in something like actual science, although still pretty far from it, and do something that feels more grounded? And what they establish is what we now call the real robot genre of anime. So this changes a lot of things, because instead of being more of like your Saturday morning cartoon kind of robot shows, Gundam has shows or individual episodes where people just straight up die, and they don't die heroic deaths. They die because war is bad and it sucks. And sometimes people just die. And the craziest thing about the original Gundam show is that it was a total fucking failure. It was a flop. It was a disaster from a marketing standpoint, because there was a company making toys based on the show, and they were trying to have all kinds of influence on the way the show was developed. And also, the concept of making a somewhat gritty, realistic depiction of war anime at the time was unheard of. So it was meant to be 50 episodes, and that got shortened down to much less. I think it was I can't remember the exact number. I want to say it was 42, something like that. So it was kind of canceled before the original intended run was even finished. And what brought Gundam back and why we're still talking about Gundam 47 years later is a series of model kits based on the show. So people were so into these model kits, which at the time were really basic. One color, glue required, fun to build or whatever, but old school model kits were so popular that the original Gundam show got a trilogy of movies where they cut the original animation with new animation and released basically the whole story as a 3-movie installment. Does that sound familiar? In movie theaters. And that was what kicked off everything that has happened subsequently. There's your history lesson. We almost didn't even get this. And now we have a thing that has spawned too many television shows to count, too many movies to count, too many video games to count.
How many episodes of Gundam are out in the ether?
How many episodes?
Yep. All right, don't even go episodes. Give me how many series spin-offs of Gundam are we talking? 40?
So let's talk about that real quick, because the thing about this is I'm talking about this thing that is so huge, right? There's so many aspects to it. How do I even get into this? And there's the first and most important thing anyone needs to know is that there's 2 entry points into watching Gundam anime. One is there is a massive interconnected storyline that has been building upon itself this entire time called the Universal Century.
Okay.
The Universal Century is a time period. The first Gundam takes place in Universal Century 79, and then subsequent shows take place
Universal
after
Century
that.
is the same way in Star Wars you would reference BBY.
Okay. Yes, for sure. Before Battle of Yavin. In this case, Universal Century marks the moment that humanity stops living exclusively on Earth and begins moving its population to orbiting space colonies. That is the hallmark of the Universal Century. So Universal Century is this huge interconnected storyline, and really you should probably watch that in order. I mean, find the show that appeals to you and start there, and just know that Universal Century is a thing, and that all of those shows and movies and in some cases games are interconnected. And that's great, because that's a huge storyline you can explore. You can see generations of characters over time. The new Gundam movie that just came out is the second in a trilogy of films about the son of one of the characters from the original show. There's a whole show where that guy is 6, and now he's headlining an entire movie and piloting a Gundam. So that's Universal Century. If you don't want to commit to a gigantic generational spanning storyline, the other best way to get into Gundam is there are several shows that are called alternate universe Gundam shows, and those are usually 50 or so episodes and maybe a movie. So I'll give you an example. The show that put Gundam on the map in the US was Gundam Wing, because it got picked up by Toonami.
Yeah.
Gundam Wing is roughly 50 episodes. It might actually be less than that, 49 or something. And then it got a movie called Endless Waltz, which is a direct sequel to the show. So if you watch the Gundam Wing anime, 49 episodes plus the movie, you've seen it. That's it. You've enjoyed the entire Gundam Wing storyline, and there's several shows like that. Gundam X is very similar. No movie there, but it's one contained series. When you finish it, you're done. G Gundam, by the way, is like if Gundam were based on Street Fighter, which I know sounds crazy. But imagine if instead of fighting a big war, there was a tournament, but Gundams were fighting. That's G Gundam. It's absurd, and I love it.
How does that work?
That's 50 episodes, and then you're done. There are a lot of shows like that.
How do you have a Street Fighter style Gundam battle?
Here's what's cool about it, man, is that when Gundam started out, it was this gritty war story. And for the most part, that's what Universal Century has stuck to. But over time, they've branched out into other things, which you may remember earlier. I said Star Wars has only recently started doing that, and they've got a lot of ground to cover. So Mandalorian is Western Star Wars.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Skeleton Crew is what if Star Wars but Treasure Island?
Yeah.
Right? Pirate Star Wars. Right? They're doing it. But what I'm trying to tell you is that Gundam started doing this in the 90s, baby.
Okay, but the question is, and we've had this discussion, is Gundam doing it better? I am a big proponent of Star Wars' side quests. I think they're fun. I think they're fun because they're not supposed to be for everyone, and everyone's frustrated that they're not for everyone. So people get mad at Skeleton Crew because they're like, this is for kids. This isn't serious enough. I want my Star Wars to be dark and serious. And I'm like, Star Wars can be for kids too. If they just want to have a fun offshoot for the kids, let them have it, and it doesn't have to be for you. Did Gundam solve that problem? Did they face that in the beginning? Have they ever faced that, or are they just crushing it?
I think Gundam is not crushing it. Historically, Gundam is not crushing it. I think the difference is that the Gundam franchise is better about making mistakes and not giving up on the idea.
Okay.
I think when we see Star Wars try something new, if it doesn't work out, then it gets dropped. There's a lot of interesting stuff that happened in the Acolyte.
100%.
And like, it probably deserves a second season. And if you're not worried about the bottom line and you're just worried about like telling a cool story, then maybe we get another season of that show and maybe that course corrects. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. There's an entire series of Gundam animes. I think there's 4 separate shows. 3 of them are kind of connected and one of them is definitely not. That are all about building Gundam model kits. And the first attempt was kind of a misfire. And it did not really explode. It wasn't very popular. The Gundam designs from it weren't even really that well received. And then they took it back to the drawing board and they came out with this other show called Gundam Build Fighters. And that has spawned 2 additional shows and an entire line of model kits. And it became a success. So kind of a mishap at the beginning, but they didn't abandon it. They stuck with it. And they made a show about building Gundam model kits work. Just to reemphasize here, this is a show that was originally about what if we applied giant robots to war, and now they are making a show about building Gundam model kits and having them fight in like a virtual reality environment.
Okay.
As like a tournament for kids. And that was like 25 years after they said, what if Gundam was Street Fighter? And pulled that off too. I think the difference is that like Gundam fans fight about which series are good, bad, whatever. Everybody has the one they don't like. Everybody has their favorite. I think the thing that sets Gundam apart is that the franchise does not forget. So there have been promotional videos recently about the history of Gundam leading up to this 50th anniversary, right? So I'll give you an example. Gundam X was not super well received, but we're at the 30th anniversary of Gundam X. And so new model kits are coming out for Gundam X. Because the franchise, like, there are fans who love this show, so we're going to put it out there. It's a momentous anniversary. You know who could learn from that is Nintendo. Do some stuff when you have anniversaries.
Okay, hold on. Serious question, though. Do you think that is only doable because Gundam has been in the diaspora for coming up on 50 years? Do you think a newer audience has the capacity to consume stuff even if they don't like it on the initial run? So like, if you don't like the first version that an entertainment enterprise is giving you, are younger and newer audiences going to give you a second shot to make that nostalgia, to make that a cult classic, to make that something that you can do an anniversary release of?
I think the answer to the question that you're asking based on the history of Gundam is that a big part of the reason that you have these alternate universe storylines that are a little bit easier to get into because you're not making this massive commitment is based around the idea of like, how do we simultaneously appease the people who have been here since the beginning while giving new people a chance to find their Gundam?
Right.
I think the franchise has done that really, really well. So like, maybe you don't want to go back and watch the original movies. Maybe you don't like the animation style or whatever. And I think they've done 2 things to help you with that. One is, here's a show that has nothing to do with the Universal Century that you can enjoy by itself. And the other thing is they keep adding to the Universal Century with updated animation, new storylines that do a very good job of linking back to the mythology that gives you a reward, a sense. If you watch a newer Universal Century show, I don't recommend doing that. I think you should watch them in order, but whatever. But if you do, then you're going to hear about characters and you might, or things that happen. And then you can go back and watch those shows and learn about those characters and see how it all connects.
What I'm hearing from you is that Gundam has a really strong appreciation and reverence for its own history, and like the fans connect with that. I don't know if we get that in newer properties, and I think that's a big point of frustration for audiences. I would venture to guess it is a larger point of contention for older audiences, but I can't say that's not necessarily true for younger audiences as well. I think people get connected to nostalgia because of how and when it really hits home for them. And that's what makes it work. So if you nurture and foster that, it can be something really powerful. I think where you lose people is when you fall back on nostalgia as a gimmick and a money grab. And it feels like you're just trying to spoon feed people what you think they want, as opposed to developing a world and a story that is true to its origins. Do you think Gundam does a good job of that?
Again, I think that Gundam has put itself in a place where it is allowed to experiment and try new things. And that's okay. Instead of having to wipe the slate clean every single time, Gundam says the next show that doesn't have anything to do with the interconnected storyline is this. And if you don't like that, if you don't like that specific show, you can understand and appreciate that in another few years, we'll get another alternate universe story that is not this one. It's almost like the flavor of the month right now is, Iron Blood Orphans or whatever. That's a show that came out like 10 years ago, Gundam show that came out 10 years ago. But there have been like several alternate universe shows since then. If Gundam Iron Blood Orphans isn't your jam, you just got to wait for another alternate universe show to show up. Meanwhile, they're trying new things, new animation techniques, new storylines with the Universal Century and keeping it going. So if you do get into the mythology of one show, you can go back and explore the ones that came previously. So there's just kind of a freedom there. By the way, we have not talked at all about the fact that these shows are full of cool ass giant robots, which is like a big point of contention for the creator, because he's like, I don't think you guys paid attention to the fact that this is about how war is bad because you love the war machine so much.
So how big of a role do you think the Gundams themselves play in the appeal to audiences of all ages and to the longevity? There are, I am unfamiliar, but I would venture to guess tens of thousands of potential Gundams you and I can build in real life outside of just the different Gundams you're seeing on shows. There is a relatability, especially in today's era where collectibles are making a surge back, where people like tangible things, where people want to be hands-on. There's something really viscerally cool about having a giant war machine, like a giant robot that kicks ass, that you can customize and make your own, that you can see one that you saw on the show and build it in real life. You can see pieces from several that you liked on the show and decide, I want to try and make my own and figure out what that looks like to me and personalize it and specialize it. And there's a world where all of these customs become almost cyclical in the nature of how they engage the audience. So like, how big of a role does just dope ass giant robots that shoot shit and kick people play in the cool factor and the longevity of the show? Is that really at a base level what's getting anyone into Gundam? Is just like dope sky robots?
I think it dope sky robots. It's awesome because I'm hearing you echo things that I've talked to you about.
That's definitively the name of this episode. Dope ass sky robots.
Dope ass sky robots. It's cool because I'm hearing you reflect back at me things that I have maybe forcibly told you about in the past, like held hostage style. Full disclosure here, I build Gundam model kits. I've been doing it since I was, 14 or something. Since buying a basic ass Gundam was nearly impossible, then you had to drive to like downtown Houston and find the anime shop where everything is marked up like 3 times what it should be. And you can read the yen price and you show the cashier like, no, actually it's this. And he's like, no, fuck you. It's 3 times that. That's how long I've been building Gundam model kits, which is practically nothing because they've been around since like 1980. So they predate me. But what I can tell you is that over time, the more I learn about this, it is not hyperbole in the slightest to call this an art form. You can build a Gundam model kit out of the box and put it on your shelf, and that's fine. And like, you don't need glue anymore. They don't really do that. You just need like a pair of cutters or whatever. Some of them don't even need that. There's a whole line of kits that you can just build with your fingers. But you put them up on your shelf and they look cool. Maybe they come with stickers or whatever. And then on the other side of that, the guy who won the Gundam Builders World Cup, which is an actual global competition.
That's insane.
In 2024, built a specific robot from the show, a piloted robot from the show that does not exist in model form. This is not a Gundam. This is like a construction worker type of robot, right? A piloted robot. And the way he did that is he bought a dozen other Gundam model kits because his whole building style is based around kit bashing, which means you take pieces from over here, you take pieces from over here, you take a little of this, a little of that, you put it together and you make something else. And you're just thinking of the model kits as shapes that you can use. Right? And then there's painting, there's modifying, there's weathering. There's some people do an anime style where they're using acrylic markers to make them look like they stepped right out of the show. Some people are doing like gritty, like war-torn, caked mud on tire tread kind of style Gundams and everything in between. One of the Gundam Builders World Cup winners last year made a dragon. Like, it's just a dragon. It's not even a Gundam, man. Like, that's what's so cool about this, right? So, yeah, cool giant sky robots, man, is a big part of the appeal here, but it's just one facet. And that I think if there's one answer to why you should get into Gundam, it's because there are so many ways to get into it. Yeah. There's so many ways to appreciate this. If giant robots are not your thing, guess what? Maybe melodrama is. Do you know what Gundam is based on? It's melodrama. The first show is teenagers trying to survive a war, right? That's the show.
So moderately relatable.
Yeah, moderately relatable. But maybe that's not your jam. Maybe you're like, I want to play video games with giant stompy robots. There have been Gundam video games almost as long as there's been video games. And right now, there's a game called, it's Gundam Extreme versus, maybe the last one is Gundam Extreme versus Maxi Boost Full On. It's an arcade game. It's a Gundam-based kind of third person perspective fighter where it's 2 teams of 2 people picking different suits. Each suit has a different cost, which is really important to the strategy of the game. But I don't think it's an exaggeration to say it's propping up the arcade industry in Japan right now. It is a huge arcade hit, and that's just one game. There are Gundam RPGs. There's Gundam actual 2D side-scrolling kind of style, Street Fighter style fighting games. There's simulators. There's all kinds of stuff. Anything you can think of. There's a Gundam video game. So it's difficult to talk about outside of the abstract because of sort of how big it is. But I wanted to maybe just like share a few of the details that I like the most. Would that help?
That would help. And along with that, because I know you've got that in mind, I would like to know why building Gundams is so cool to you specifically. You specific.
Yeah.
That first time you built a Gundam, outside of like wanting to do it because of the show, what about the actual act of building Gundams really connects with you? So yeah, go ahead.
I mean, what's wild is that we could do a whole episode just on that, no problem. But let me tell you the story of how I got into it. In the late 90s, when Gundam started showing up on Cartoon Network, there was a brief period of time where you could actually buy Gundam stuff in stores. You could go to Target and buy Gundam action figures or whatever. And I was getting into the show, and I was getting into these action figures, and so I would go to Target and buy Gundams or whatever and bring them home. And a buddy of mine was like, hey, you know, they have model kits, right? And I was like, yeah. And I'd seen them, and they actually did this push for them in stores like Target where they redid the packaging a little bit and created this skill level system, which is total bullshit and doesn't exist anymore. But it was like, this is a skill level 5 Gundam or whatever. And he pointed that out, and I was like, yeah. And he said, dude, you should build the model kit because it's like getting the action figure, but you put it together yourself. So it would mean more to you. And I was like, fuck it. I'll try it out. So I got some. There weren't many available, but I got some, and this was back in the old days. Compared to the technology they have for Gundam model kits now, they feel archaic, but I put some together. I started learning about how to do that, jumped right into hand painting with acrylic paint, which was a huge mistake. But I was trying things out, you know, like I got some glow in the dark paint. I got like blacklight responsive stuff to make things look like they were glowing. I really got into it. I had no idea for like the quote unquote right way of doing this, or I hadn't started researching like how other people approach this or whatever. I had a pair of like wire cutters that I was cutting pieces out of the trees with, and a bad X-Acto knife from like Hobby Lobby or whatever. And I was putting stuff together, and it was fun, and I really enjoyed it. And that grew into discovering Hobby Japan magazine, which is a full print, lot of dead trees style magazine. And there might be something not Gundam on the cover.
Fuck them trees.
But you fuck them trees. But you best believe that every single issue of Hobby Japan has some cool Gundams in it, and usually shows you some cool techniques. So like then I had not studied Japanese, but I would like look at these images in this pile of dead trees and be like, what are they doing? And like try to figure it out and try and learn new techniques that way. And at this point, I'm 14.
Bro, that's so relatable though. Like, like before I got into superheroes, like heavy into superheroes, before I've ever bought a comic, which I'm not a heavy comic dude, but before I got into lore and all that, one of the only magazines I used to pick up was Wizard magazine.
Yeah, dude.
Get that religiously and read it to read about storylines I wasn't gonna get the full story on. So like I hear that and I'm like, God, that is so relatable as like a nerdy teenage experience, is the like tactile magazine of the thing you're into and being like, I'm gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure out what's going on here.
Well, there's that. And then also at the time, Hobby Japan wasn't printed in the US. So the only ones that I got my hands on were just like, they felt like I found a magical artifact. You know what I mean? Like I would wander into a store that had one, or I would be at a half price and randomly they had one. You know, for the longest time, I had maybe 6 of them total, right? Because where do you get them from? Now I order them on eBay and I buy them from Kinokuniya, and it's not as big of a deal. But as a 14-year-old getting into a hobby that felt so like geographically far away from me, my access to Gundam models, period, limited. My access to tools that weren't just like your standard issue craft tools, non-existent, right? And then there were these magazines where I was seeing people do this at the highest level. Because that's who's in here, right? These are the people who are winning competitions. They're getting published. Their work is so good that it's getting published. And so I could see even from that age, this is how far it can go.
Yeah.
And I was wrong, because it actually went so much farther than that. It's wild. And so when I build now, it's taught me a lot about discipline. It's taught me a lot about Zen. It's like what I do to chill out. It is a reset for me. And even within the hobby itself, there's so many different ways to appreciate it and engage with it. Like I started going to, and you've done this with me, but I've started going to local breweries with a Gundam, right? Because you can snap together a Gundam. Nobody cares if you have a pair of nippers and a X-Acto blade or whatever where you drink a beer. But you can snap together a Gundam at your local bar or whatever and enjoy it. And then you can come home and be a psychopath and kit bash it and meticulously paint everything and modify it and use parts from another kit on this part and enter a competition, and you can go full psycho mode if you want. And it's all valid, right? If you just build it out of the box and put it on the shelf, you're doing the hobby. There's not a right way or a wrong way. You can take it as far as you want. And if all you want to do is build the kit out of the box, fine. If you want to like experiment with painting, great. That's fucking awesome. I feel like you can get into the hobby with a basic amount of tools, and then there's an actual infinite ceiling you can climb of other stuff to get. Just like every other hobby, right? You get into playing music, you buy a guitar from a pawn shop or whatever. Great. Well, it would be cool if I had a better amp. Well, it'd be cool if my guitar had better pickups. Well, it'd be cool if I had better strings. All of a sudden, like I've been doing this for so long that yeah, I do have an airbrush. I have a spray booth. I have lights. I got, like a toolbox full of tools, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And that's part of it too, is just like every time I go out there and try a new technique, like I'm doing one now where the kit I'm working on is a Zaku 2 from the original show, but it's huge. It's a mega sized kit. It's like 2 feet tall, which is not normal, but it's pretty big, and it has some detailed panel lines in its armor already that look like if you cut them out, they could be doors and you could like see inside and see the internals. And because it's so big, it felt like a good place to try doing an open hatch style. So for the last few nights when I go work on this Zaku, I'm actually cutting out and creating the voids in the armor. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to take bits of whatever to make the internal structure. I'm just kicking it from my mind. I'm not looking at schematics. We're talking pipes, we're talking wires, whatever makes sense visually, that's what's going in there. And then my plan is to build a door that matches the hole that I cut out and have it propped up on little pistons. So it's like mechanics have opened the armor to get in there and make repairs. So you can take this as far as you want, or you can scale it back and just go to the bar and enjoy putting one together. Who cares? That's what makes this so interesting and fun. And then at the end, you have a dope ass sky robot.
Yeah. Like we said, dope ass sky robots. What more do you need to say? So you've made a really good, compelling case for why people should get into Gundam, what can really push you into the universe, the series, and quite frankly, just the toys. What I want to hear from you is what might keep people skeptical. Let's give a quick cross examination.
Okay.
What's the biggest flaw? Give me an idea of some things that haven't aged well. Who's this not for?
I suppose that somewhere in the world there might be people who are not into giant robots.
Okay.
And I feel like if you know in your heart of hearts that you are just not interested in giant robots, then I think it may be difficult for you to get into Gundam.
Okay.
Even though I wouldn't even say that they are necessarily the most important part of the anime, that really it's about the characters. If you don't really care about giant robots, this may be a deal breaker for you because it all kind of comes back to giant robots and you kind of have to appreciate that.
Is it fair to say if anime is not your bag, you like Gundam isn't going to get you into anime?
If anime is not your bag, I think you got to reevaluate, because saying anime is not your bag is a lot like saying I just don't like food. Right? Like if you say,
you were going to say I don't like pizza, I thought you were going to say I don't like chicken. He said
no.
Food.
It really is that broad, because if you said like I don't really like sci-fi anime, yeah, I get it. Maybe you're into more like fantasy stuff. Maybe you're into more like cozy slice of life anime, whatever, that's fine. I think one of the things we didn't quite get to hit on, but I wanted to bring up when we were doing the comparison to Star Wars thing, is like part of the power of animation is that you can continue telling stories with these characters long after the actors are not even here.
Yeah.
Right? And so like when you think about Gundam, like we're still seeing stories with some of the original characters. Amuro Ray, who's the original Gundam pilot, showed up in the most recent movie. Right? Now, like that actor's not doing his voice anymore.
Yeah.
But mythologically, that kind of doesn't matter, because if you've been watching this whole time and paying attention to the story, you can still appreciate that he showed up. So anyway, if you don't like anime, I would suggest you reevaluate and understand that there are so many genres and different types of anime that there's bound to be one out there that you like. And part of the power of the medium is that you're not tied to a specific actor forever. You're not limited by time. Right? Like how many more times are we going to get Chris Evans in the MCU? Probably not that many. How many more times are we going to get Hugh Jackman in the MCU? Probably not that many, right? And a lot of what we're seeing with the MCU right now is resetting so they can maybe eventually recast some of these characters. You don't have to do that in Gundam or in anime in general. Like, you can keep going. So I would highly suggest that if you don't like anime, you perhaps have not found the right one, and may I recommend One Piece.
I mean, you got me into One Piece. I haven't gotten into the anime because over 10,000 episodes. But
yeah,
the live action's fire. And I'm locked in.
You were asking about what are the things that may turn people off. Yeah. I think the sheer amount of Gundam and the complexity of it is a problem, right?
Okay.
It's a benefit because if you are into it, holy crap, there's so much stuff to explore. But I feel like it can be really easy for new fans to not know where to begin, even though there are a lot of systems in place to kind of help you with that. So, for example, the model kits. There are multiple grades of model kits that kind of give you an indication of like how easy it is, right? But nobody kind of understands that unless someone takes the time to explain it to them. So maybe you go to Hobbytown and you see, oh, there's a Gundam here that's $650, which exists now. But it is 160 or 1/60th scale, and it is full of LEDs and complex and probably not good for a beginner. And then there are what are called like high grade Gundams, and they are like usually roughly 6 inches tall. It depends on the scale of the robot.
Yep.
And there aren't that many pieces. They still look cool, and they still have different colors and stickers and whatever, but they just don't have the same level of complexity. So if you don't know, that's where you should start. And I feel like people don't know that. They just see like the really complicated one, and they're like, no, it's too much. I can't. And same thing with the show, like if you're going to start watching Gundam, where do you start? And if you start from the very beginning, you're watching that 1978 produced animation. You know what I mean? And that can be tough, but you don't have to. It's just that not everybody has a Jonathan McNamara in their back pocket to help them on their journey. But I'm trying here. You're trying
to get us in. You're trying to get us in. And with that in mind, I think you did a pretty good job. This was a solid rundown of why people should be into Gundam. You definitely got me with the drama of it all and like the sheer breadth of entry points. If you were going to say somebody wants to get into Gundam, one place to start, what is your recommended, like, you got to start here. This is how you get in. This is the right way to do it. And then backtrack to whatever you like. What would be your suggestion?
Okay. If you're going to get into model kits, I'll do model kits in anime because that's what I know the best. If you're going to get into model kits, I think what you should do is find a hobby shop. I go to Hobbytown. If you live near a Kinokuniya, which is a Japanese bookstore, we're lucky enough to have one in Austin. If you live near a Kinokuniya that sells Gundams, I would go there. Or you can check online. Like I shop at New Type the most. That's the place where I get most of my kits. Find the one that looks cool to you. Don't worry about the complexity necessarily. Just know that the basic grades are high grade, master grade, and perfect grade. And if you're starting out, perfect grade is probably not where you want to be. But master grade might be. If it's a kit that looks cool enough to you and you want to get into Gundam, it's more important that you find a kit that you're like, oh shit, I love shoulder mounted guns. That's so cool. Or if you're like, oh man, this one's all about giant swords. That's my jam. Whatever it is, that's where you need to be. Get that kit in the grade that you feel comfortable with. I would recommend high grade or master grade to start. That's where to go. The only tool that you really, really need is a pair of nippers.
Yep.
They can be basic ass nippers that you got at the craft store. That's fine. But you need that and maybe an X-Acto knife, and it's going to get you pretty much all the way there. Yeah. No glue. You don't need glue. That's model kits. If you're talking anime, I actually think the best place to start, place I recommend, is this show called Gundam 00.
Okay.
Gundam 00's 2 seasons, so it's 50 episodes, and there's a movie. The movie's cool if you need some more, but I like the show the best. And the premise of the show is Earth has essentially separated into 3 nation states.
Okay.
Each one has a solar elevator. And so they all control about a third of the Earth's power because they're getting all of it from solar arrays in orbit via space elevators. So remember I said there's a grounding in actual technology. There's 3 nation states, and then there's this team of Gundams who show up, and they just unilaterally say to the world, we are ending armed conflict, full stop. If you engage in armed conflict, the Gundams will stop you. We are ending war. We are getting rid of war by fighting you if you go to war, which doesn't totally make sense, but just go.
The irony of that is not lost on me.
Sure. And it's also not lost on the characters, which is part of what makes it really interesting. But your investment here is 50 episodes.
Okay.
Right? That's not a huge investment. If you want a good entry point in general, I would say Gundam 00 is where it's at. The animation is still pretty new, so you're not going to be fighting against this looks bad or whatever. Although I love the old animation as well. It's a good place for people who have never watched Gundam before to start. If you want to get involved in the original Universal Century storyline and appreciate this like long, ever expanding generational story, I think where I would go is the original Gundam movies, the Mobile Suit Gundam trilogy. There's some of the original animation is there with some newer, better, more complex animation as well. And that only becomes more true as the movies go on, because remember, the final third of that story got cut short, but they were able to fully realize it in this third movie. So there's a lot of new animation there. And you're talking 3 movies, right? And you get the entire storyline of the original show. And if you like it and you like those characters, you can move on to Zeta Gundam. If you don't want to invest in a whole nother 50 episode show, you could go from the original Mobile Suit Gundam trilogy to this other movie called Char's Counterattack, which is excellent. And then go where the Gundam winds take you.
Nice. All right. Okay. Look at you. Give your audience some homework, man.
This is my jam. So
typically we give a score on our judgments when we're reviewing something. That is not what we will be doing today. Today, I am going to give you a persuasion score on
all right,
you did of convincing audience members that they need to get into Gundam. And you did a good job. You touched on the movies, you touched on the video games. You really were in your bag when you were talking about the Gundam kits. I'm going to give it an 8. You did a good job. I can't go up to 9.
That's fine.
This is your bag. I got to go 8. There are moments where I feel like you were holding back, honestly. If I'm being real with you, you were holding back from me a little bit. Because I've heard you talk about this personally, and I've heard the excitement ramp up 7 levels. I'm going to knock you down a little bit.
That's fair. I feel like I'm holding back because it's so hard not to get in the weeds on this.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about a general, I give myself a 6. If we're talking about a general primer on this, there's so many tiny little details that are worth discussing, like the game that we mentioned right now that's basically propping up the Japanese arcade industry was based on a game that developed by Capcom, the same guys who did Street Fighter, which is awesome. We didn't even talk about Char Aznable, who's one of the greatest characters in fiction.
That's a preposterous statement.
No, dude, I'm telling you.
Throw that out casually.
Listen, my wife does not care about Gundams except that she appreciates how much I love them, but she knows who Char is. All right? Okay?
Okay.
He's a big deal. We haven't talked about part of the reason it's so convenient to compare this to Star Wars is that there is a lot of overlap. Like the Gundams have beam sabers. Sounds kind of like lightsaber, function the same way. They're much bigger. But there's that. I was actually watching the second Gundam Zeta movie today as just a little brain primer before we recorded this episode. And one of the things that movie talks about a lot is that in the Gundam universe, there is a mystical, supernatural element called new types. And it's not super clear, especially when you're starting out in the story, what a new type even is, other than perhaps they are the next step in human evolution. And people become that way because they stop living on a planet and start living in space. And space represents the future, the evolution of humanity into a spacefaring race. And so in some ways, new types are just ace pilots. But in other ways, New types can communicate with each other across vast distances telepathically. Perhaps they can commune with the dead. Perhaps they can tap into powers that we don't even fully understand.
So they're Jedi.
Well, yeah, except, and this is just another example of how Gundam has taken this and run with it in terms of scale. One of the main storylines of Zeta Gundam is after the first show, where new types were a big part of the storyline. But the second show dives into how can we create new types? What happens if you take an ordinary human and try to turn them into a new type? What does that do to them? What do they become? How unstable are they going to be? And so there's a lot to explore there.
You should have led with this. Now it's locked in. On the new Titans are like, okay, hold up.
Yeah. So is Char a new type? Is Amuro a new type? This is one of the big driving questions. When you get to the end of Char's counterattack, the ending has a lot to do with what a new type even is and what it means. You get to my favorite Universal Century show, which is Gundam Unicorn. That show has some crazy new type shit. Maybe time travel? That's all I'm going to say right now. It is a grounded war story that gives you just enough of this supernatural other thing that it gives you stuff to think about. What would humanity be like if we moved in space? What directions might we evolve into if we were more limited in our environment? What would happen? How would we have to change? And what would that do to the nature of warfare? Maybe warfare goes away. One of the theories is that new types are just empaths. And if you understand everyone, you don't have to go to war with anyone.
Okay, I like that. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And with that has been the EVA persuasion class on why you should be into Gundams. That is Agent J-Mac. I am Agent Nakware. Shout out to They Call Him Swerve for our intro and exit music. Check out J-Mac and Danielle at Life Begins at 8-Bit with their Wednesday night streams. It's worth a watch, it's worth a listen, it's worth a view. Please like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. We really appreciate it, and stay dope.
Thank you for listening to the Entertainment Variance Authority. Listen to additional episodes wherever you get your podcasts and keep an ear out for future episodes.
So we're pruning Gundam, right?